Did you know the average 4-year-old laughs 300 times a day, where the average 40-year-old laughs only 4? Laughter is great for everyone, regardless of age. The dose of dopamine helps reduce stress and boost our mood. Hi, I'm Rosemary from Midlife Yoga and Wellness. Welcome to Midlife Conversations, where I interview people who say yes. Yes to learning something new. Yes to trying new experiences. Watch what can happen when you take a risk and say yes to life. Today's midlife conversation introduces a woman who is using midlife to add more laughter to the world. Janet Regensburg spent 32 years as a high school math teacher. Her Encore career, stand-up comedian. How did Janet make the transition from classroom to comedy? Let's find out. So welcome, Janet, to Midlife Conversations. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Rosemary. How are you?
Good. And thank you so much for sharing what I think is a really interesting story about your Encore career. So, Janet, it might seem to our audience that math teacher to then stand-up comic doesn't seem like a straight line. So maybe we could start by looking back. Like the lead up to comedy, what are some of your earliest memories of being drawn to comedy?
Well, I grew up in a big family. I'm the youngest of 6. And we used to sit around, the living room watching these comedy variety shows back in the 70s, like the Carol Burnett show, Flip Wilson, Tony Orlando and Dawn, Cher, Sonny and Cher.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say that was the start of it.
Out of those shows, was there one that you were drawn to more than the others?
Oh, I love the Carol Burnett show.
And what was it about Carol Burnett or about her show that you particularly enjoyed?
Well, I think as like a little girl, I could relate. I was like, wow, this woman is so funny and she's doing skits and she's on stage. Someday I want to be her, She was very relatable.
That's someday I want to be her. Well, then that sort of leads us into, when was it that you first realized that you had the ability to make people laugh?
Oh, I think when I was in school, I think probably kindergarten.
Really?
And I was probably one, I think my friends told me I was one of those who would make the other kids laugh, and then I would be quiet and they wouldn't know it was me that was causing the trouble, like me.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And how did you feel when you made other kids laugh?
Oh, it's an amazing feeling. You feel so light and uplifted. It's great to make people laugh, and you feel like you have some sort of power, but, in a good way.
It's a superpower for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me earlier that coming from a big family, it was a little more difficult to be noticed, especially being the youngest of all your siblings. So how did your ability to make people laugh sort of help you with that?
Well, everybody in my family was funny, so it was really kind of competitive to be funnier than one of your other siblings. So when I got to school, and I was able to be funny with my friends, and that made it, a lot easier for me to be funnier with my friends than to be funny with the family.
Yeah. Okay. So the years go on, and as we spoke about, life sometimes gets in the way. So you didn't follow the path of Carol Burnett. Instead, you decided to become a teacher. There was a moment in time while you were a teacher that you wanted to pursue comedy in a bigger way. So can we kind of start with that?
Well, while I was teaching, it was sort of a tradition at our school that people ran the welcome back show, the Christmas show, holiday show, that kind of thing. And the summer, have a great summer kind of show. We had a few few events throughout the year. And it turns out that as teachers retired who would be doing those shows, it was passed on to other people. So then at some point it was passed on to me and a few other colleagues. And we were like a full woman, female team, like 4 or 5 of us. And we would get input from all the other teachers, and we'd create a slideshow and things like that. And just we'd write out our script and jokes and stuff. And so that was
you basically created your own comedy troupe right there in your school.
Absolutely. And I worked with a lot of funny people. I mean, really great, hilarious. And it was a wonderful experience because people that we worked with, they would run up to us in the hallway. Let's say, gee, I'd be on hall duty, or they'd run into my classroom and drop off like a piece of paper with an idea, or they'd send a picture of something, like some ridiculous sign that was up in the hallway. And they'd say, oh, you got to use this, you know? And so we get the input from all the other colleagues just to create this show, because it's not one person who does it. It's a group of people who make that happen.
Yeah. Well, then you said kind of into your career, maybe 25 years in, that one of your fellow teachers made a suggestion about something.
Well, actually, it was a former student of mine.
Oh, a student.
Who
Okay.
became a math teacher and shared the classroom with me. Yeah, Ed. So Ed, I mentioned it to Ed since we were sharing a class. I said, you know, I think I'm going to take this comedy class in New York. And he says, oh, you definitely should, you know. And I said, I'm going to, and I did. And then when I came home, I told my husband, I said, I'm thinking about, you know, and I have a few other people at work who says, oh, Janet, you should do it. My friend, Michelle, I've told her 100 times, she was like, oh, Janet, you have to do it. You should definitely do it. She's been at work. Michelle was my biggest supporter and still is, you know, and she was like, you got to do it. You know, and I have so many other friends, my friend Veronica, I can name a million people.
Right. It doesn't happen, like you said, it's not something you do alone. But the secret was there was this passion living inside of you, and you were brave enough to share it with other people. And then they began to encourage you. So can you tell me then a little bit about this experience at the American Comedy Institute?
Sure. So I looked it up on Google. I said, oh, let me see if there is a place that you go to, you know, to just learn about comedy. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I saw American Comedy Institute and I read the reviews and I said, oh, I'm going to try this. And I looked at the course. It was a 2-week intensive course. You had to go over to the city and be it was when we could do all that stuff in person.
Right.
And I had nothing. I mean, I didn't know what to do. And
right.
So the first day was an intro to the comedy business, what to expect. And the objective was to create a 5-minute set in that 2-week span.
Now, it would sound to me like 5 minutes isn't really that long of a time, but what does it feel like from the comedian's perspective? What is 5 minutes really?
5 minutes can feel like an eternity. I mean, I was a runner, you know, I was a competitive runner in high school and in college, and try taking off 1 second from your personal best time. Yeah. It's very difficult. So time is interesting. You know, 5 minutes is hard, and to get a tight 5 minutes takes hard work, and to get the laughs throughout the 5-minute set is a craft, and it takes time. To learn the craft.
So in this intensive institute, were they teaching you then how to take your material and then, you know, maybe your first draft was like 15 minutes long and they teach you how to make it tighter, make it shorter, right?
Exactly. The director, Stephen Rosenfield, he's a master at what he does. And you bring in your material. You go over it with him in individual sessions, the way it's set up. And then he tweaks it for you. He helps you think about another way of how you could deliver it. And you learn your persona or your attitude for the jokes that are going to work. And it's a great program, and I recommend it to everybody.
So for any wannabe comedians, they can look up the American Comedy Institute, and I'll actually leave a link in the show notes for anybody that's interested. So, okay, you've had these couple of weeks and now you've got your 5-minute set. Tell me a little bit about the culmination, that performance.
Okay, so I was super nervous. I mean, it was the first time ever I would be up on a stage doing comedy. I mean, besides being up in front of the classroom every day, it was a different experience, but it was amazing. And it was a packed room. I had such support from my colleagues, and I had, like, I don't know, 25 people, friends, family, colleagues come to the show.
How many people in total were in the audience?
I think there had to be at least 60 to 70 people.
Oh, yeah. So that's a pretty big crowd.
But it was a packed house, and it was a great show. And I was nervous as anything. And it happened, and I felt amazing afterwards. I was like, wow, you know?
So let's pause for a minute to just talk about you now on stage with a microphone. Did you have like that stool where they put a glass of water? I'm always seeing comedians have a stool next to them, glass of water, so they can sit if they want to sip their water. Did you have that?
Yes. And you know what I had? Because I remember, if it was your first time, Steve said, have your material folded up in your back pocket, or, and if you don't have a back pocket, I guess you can stuff it in your bra, and that would be funny to pull it out if you forget your lines, right?
There you go. Yeah. So tell me about like the initial moments of delivering your set, and did you get a laugh? And then what was it like getting that first laugh?
Oh, it was incredible. Yes, I got a laugh, and I got a lot of laughs through the whole set because I did my chicken delight routine. I did my mom. I just did regular stuff, things, expressions that bother me, like it is what it is, that kind of thing. And it was just amazing. I felt really exhilarated after the set.
That's something that we come back to when you pursue a passion, and then you get that moment where you're just lit up inside and something tells you, yes, I am meant to do this. You go back then to your day job, right, as a teacher. And I found it very interesting that you shared with me different ways that teaching and stand-up comedy are not all that different. And anybody who's been a teacher can understand that statement. So I'm going to quote something that you said to me in our pre-interview. You said, teaching calculus was easy. Comedy is hard. What did you mean by that?
Mathematics always kind of came easy to me, but I worked hard at it in college. I worked to do all the advanced courses, and I taught AP statistics for 20 years out of my 32 years. And I basically developed that course myself. And the work that went into that was super duper hard work to prepare those lessons. Comedy is similar, where it takes a lot of time to get really good at it.
Yeah. And
sometimes you bomb in your lessons, and you're like, oh my God, that was a horrible lesson. I got to redo that one. The kids were snoring.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good analogy. You mentioned to me though about, and I like your point that being a math teacher, it wasn't like it was easy immediately. You had to learn your craft, and the same with comedy. But for someone who's a math teacher, and whatever side of the brain we say is dominant for math, you said you had to learn about words, about expressing things. Can you just talk a little bit about that, and how is that going for you these days?
Well, because mathematics was my strength, the English language was not always my strength. Words were not my friends, numbers were. So it took me a long time to develop the right word, the right delivery, like when do I use and, when do I use but? I know it sounds easy, but if you're not a language person, You know, those things are difficult. And so that takes practice. And basically it's about writing every day and getting better at it.
Yes. You gave me a very interesting story that your teaching experience really helped you in stand-up comedy, especially when it came to hecklers. Can you share with me how being a teacher helped you with that?
Well, I always joke around and say, you know, every day you're up in front of the classroom, you get heckled, you get the kids who want to say stupid things, right?
Yeah.
and you know, interrupt you, and you know, over the years you get, you know, quite a few instances of misbehavior, right? So as a stand-up comic, you can come across bad behavior as well. You know, I had one guy talking about yelling out something about his body part. I don't know how it related to my joke. I don't even remember, but I kept asking him to repeat what he said because I honestly didn't hear him because it was a big crowd. And because I kept asking him to repeat it, he got annoyed and he stopped talking.
So Janet, next I'd like to talk a little bit about the process of stand-up comedy in case some people are interested. So can you tell us a little bit about your process for writing your stand-up comedy today?
Okay, so today I like to look at the headlines, see what's going on, and maybe write something up about that. Not that I'll necessarily use it, but I'll just write, you know, something about what's happening if it sounds bizarre, you know.
And these days there's quite a bit that's bizarre in the headlines. So that's, yeah, there's a lot of material there.
Yes, or I like to observe, like when I go out for the day, I like to interact with people. I really love to interact with people and hear their stories and hear their events and things like that. Besides my friends and family, you know, I like to and people tend to talk to me, which I thank God for that. Like I like that people will talk to me, and I like to delve into like what, you know, who they are and what they do.
Yeah.
And so I like to know about stories, and I like to talk about like anecdotal things, like things that happened and what made them funny that they happened.
A slice of everyday life that people can relate to. You shared a really interesting anecdote about your local newspaper guy. So can you share that with our audience?
Oh, you mean the guy in my local liquor store, right?
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. The guy, I guess that's where he sells papers too.
Okay.
So when I go in to get the paper for my husband's old school, he reads the newspaper, right?
So do
I
I.
read the news online. But it's in the liquor store. So I go into and the guy just loves my short hair. It's just funny. And every time I go in there, he comments about my short hair, you know?
Yes.
And I always like to return a compliment. So I really never know what to say back. So I just say, thanks, nice ears.
Does he laugh when you say that to him?
Yeah. He laughs because he knows that I'm going to say it every time. Every time he'll point to my hair. And I say, I know.
Nice hair.
Nice
ears. Yeah. Is he the same
because
guy?
Oh, wait, I forgot to tell you, the funny part is he's bald. You know, the funny part is the guy is bald, and that's why I'm thinking he has to love my hair. He has none.
Is he the same guy that gives you chocolate bars?
He's the guy who gives me the chocolate candy, you know. And so I told my husband, watch out, you got some competition. Every time I go in there, he wants to hand me a little chocolate.
So there's some real benefits to comedy, right? You get free chocolate for it too.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me that you like to use your mom in your comedy routine. Now, what makes your mom a funny subject?
Oh, my mom was British, and she had that British sense of humor. She would always say, oh, you got your sense of humor from your mom.
So you also mentioned to me that you like to sometimes use as material things that irritate us. So things that people find universally irritating. Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, like when I first started comedy back in 2014, one of the assignments, the first assignment on the first night was to go home and think about things that annoy you, okay, and write about them. And I thought, and I'm on the bus home from New York City. I got to get up at 5 o'clock the next morning. The class ended at 10, but I'm in overdrive, like
Yes.
I'm thinking about and so I was at the time, the expression, it is what it is. Everybody was using it. Okay. And I could not stand that expression. Right. Everywhere at work. Oh, well, it is what it is. Oh, well, and so I made a joke about saying, well, when people have nothing else to say, or nothing else to add to it, they say it is what it is. And I say, what is that is what it is? Why should it be that? What is it that it is? And what I'm trying to say is, what the heck is it?
You also mentioned to me about people with wet lips. What do we find so irritating about wet lips?
Yeah, I haven't even used that yet, but it's a joke between friends and stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's like the A-Rod, like making fun of famous people. Like A-Rod is this good-looking, athletic. He's rich. He's got everything, right? But he has wet lips. Okay, so like that's a deal breaker for me. Like he can have everything else, but he's got wet lips. All right.
And we all know somebody who has wet lips. So right now, everybody who's listening is thinking about the person that they know and A-Rod and their wet lips.
Reason I have this thing about the wet lips is there was a guy in high school that everybody liked. I'm not going to name him but everybody liked it. He was cool. He was good looking at. He had everything going for him. And I could have had a chance with the guy, but he had wet lips.
That's it. Done. Deal's
and
over.
I said, oh, that's eternal. I just don't like the wet lips.
All right. So in going back to the American Comedy Institute, you performed at the Gotham Comedy Club for that first night. But then how did your comedy career start to take shape? How did you get gigs? What was that process like?
Okay, so I had no idea what it was kind of like just on the bucket list, something to do. And I didn't think that it would continue. And I wasn't on social media at the time. I got on social media. That was one of the things the director says, get on social media. And I got on Facebook, and then people reached out to me who run clubs and shows. And I got connected through those people, and clubs in Manhattan. And that's how I got started. And so word of mouth, and I performed with other comedians. And basically in the comedy world, you really get your gigs by having your name moved on through other people.
Word of mouth. Sure.
Yeah, word of mouth. Like, so if someone likes what you do, they respect you enough to give your name. And I do that for other comedians as well. I find that someone's, just started performing with me and they're great. I give their name on to other people who are having shows.
Well, for those who are not familiar with you, Janet, and I follow you on Facebook, you're performing every week. Am I correct when I'm saying that, or nearly every week now?
Well, since right before the pandemic, I was just starting to get on a roll. I was still teaching, and I was getting almost a gig a weekend, and then things shut down, right? And now, since everything's been opening up, I'm fortunate enough to be getting the gigs, and I'm very happy about them. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. And so when you are doing a comedy show, is the experience beginning to feel more comfortable now than it did in the early days?
Yes, it is more comfortable, but I do a lot of preparation. And when I add in new jokes, it's still like the beginning. So are the jokes going to work? I'm going to try them out on friends first, and did I deliver them right? I could deliver them better. I'm trying. It's very hard to create a new joke that lands and works the first time. And then sometimes, surprisingly, while I'm performing, I may say the joke a different way by pure chance that I said it a way that I may not have practiced it. And it came out better because I was more relaxed. I was more ready to be more conversational. Exactly. Like, yes. I recently told this joke about my gynecologist retiring. And I said, and I was upset. I said, I asked him, why are you retiring? And he said, I've been in it too long.
In thinking about your stand-up comedy career, what have been some of the biggest challenges? You spoke to me a lot about how self-doubt can creep in as well. So could you say a little more about that?
Oh, sure. You always, I mean, not you, I always am asking the question, am I funny enough? Am I reaching all audiences? But I'm trying to be who I am at this point in my life, like what I'm going through. I talk about the things that I've gone through.
What have you learned about yourself by going through the process of trying something new, by putting yourself out there as a woman in stand-up comedy? Actually, I'll share with you a quote that you gave me. Comedy has taught me that I have a talent I can use to make people laugh and be happy. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yes, I mean, I think it's important that we all have something that makes us feel like we have value.
Yeah.
And just because we finish one career doesn't mean we have to be finished in general. We can have something else that interests us. And we work on it. Like a lot of people would say, oh, you do it as a hobby. I said, no, I'm actually doing it now almost full time.
Oh, it's a career for sure.
It's a career, and when I first started, it was maybe like, I'm going to try it out, but I didn't. Once I found out I might be pretty good at it and that I can keep working at it, then it becomes something else. And knowing my goal is to make people laugh and happy. That's the key.
There you go. And how important is that? It always is. So,
and we need it more now than ever.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. So, Janet, what would be your dream comedy gig?
Well, I said someday I'd like to do either a one-woman show, or I'd like to have my own show, like a Tonight Show type of thing. Which that is
I'm available. I'm available to sit on the couch. So
perfect. Thank you, Rosemary. You'll be my first sit on the couch person.
Oh, there you go. That would be great. A one-woman show. I mean, it sounds like that's a lot, right?
Yeah, but you are also a great example of our second act in life. Our first act was teaching, and now you have your amazing yoga for midlife yoga, right?
Janet, if you had any advice for people who are in our age group, right, and who might be thinking, I'd like to try something, but I'm really afraid. What if I fail? What would you say to people who are considering taking that leap of faith?
Well, I would tell them just do it, because listen, we can't be afraid to fail. And I think that's the biggest fear with many people. But, if it's something you're passionate about, you're going to do great anyway, because the passion is going to shine through and it's going to then become natural. So you give yourself time. But if you never start, you'll never get to that point where you feel that it's something intrinsic to you.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Janet, if people want to find out more about you, where you're performing soon, where can they learn more about you?
Okay, I'm on Facebook, my whole name, Janet Regensburg, and I'm on Instagram at Janet Regs.
And I'll leave those links for people below. Like I said, it seems to me like you're performing every week. So you're hot right now, Janet. You're hot. So, Janet, one final question. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of comedy?
All right. Well, of course, Joan Rivers. Was one of the best.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I love Wanda Sykes, Carol Burnett. And there's a lot of female comedians I relate to, but Robin Williams was one of my favorites.
Oh, brilliant.
favorites. He was really, but if I had to add more, I like Kate McKinnon from Saturday Night Live. I think she does amazing impersonations and she's just hilarious. And
Yes.
Molly Shannon.
Yes. Saturday Night Live has brought us so much laughter over the years, so many great comedians. Janet, the show is still on. You still have your chance to get on Saturday Night Live.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. Janet, thank you so much for joining me to share a little bit about your comedy journey. I really admire your bravery for taking that step. And even with any obstacles that came your way, you just kind of dusted yourself off. You've kept going. And you are really an inspiration to a lot of us in midlife. So you've been a great guest, Janet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosemary.
Thank you for joining me for Midlife Conversations. If you're interested in learning more about the classes and programs I offer, please visit my website. That's www.midlifeyogaandwellness.com. I'll see you for our next episode of Midlife Conversations.